All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are getting really personal. We're diving into one of the most revealing chapters of Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money, the one where he pulls back the curtain on his own family's finances and breaks down the simple, powerful ideas that guide everything they do. So, this whole thing kicks off with a fantastic question from this billionaire investor, Sandy Gottesman. When he was interviewing people, he wouldn't ask for stock tips, he'd just ask, "What do you own and why?" It's such a clever question because it cuts right through the noise and shows you what people actually do with their money, not just what they say they do. And as you're about to see, that gap between what we say and what we do, well, sometimes it's a giant canyon. And this isn't just some theory, right? You see it in the real world with the pros. I mean, get this. A study found that half of mutual fund managers don't put a single penny of their own money into the funds they manage. And it gets even crazier. An essay revealed that doctors, who might recommend really aggressive treatments for their patients at the end of life, often choose much less intervention for themselves. It's just a perfect example of how our own decisions are driven by way more than just cold, hard logic. And that really brings us to this quote from the legend, Charlie Munger. This single idea, it's the absolute core of Housel's entire approach to money. The goal was never about getting rich, never about having the fanciest stuff. It was always about one thing, and one thing only: independence. But what does independence even mean? It's not about being so rich you never have to work again. No. It's about control. It's the freedom to wake up in the morning and say, "I'm going to do what I want to do today." That is the real dividend, the real payout you get from wealth, having options. And Housel saw this play out in his own life. His dad was an ER doctor. Talk about a high-stress job, right? But because his parents were smart about saving, one day his dad just decided he was done. He walked away. He quit. He didn't have to get anyone's permission. His savings had bought him that freedom. And that experience made a huge impact on Housel. And this is maybe the single most important point of the whole chapter. That kind of freedom has almost nothing to do with how much money you make. It's all about how much you save. You can have a giant income, but if you spend it all, you're trapped. The magic happens in that space between your ego and your income. That's where you find your freedom. So how did Housel and his wife actually do this? It was one simple but honestly game-changing decision they made. Pretty early on, they figured out a lifestyle that made them happy. And then, as their income started to grow, their lifestyle stayed the same. They didn't fall into the trap of upgrading the car or the house every time they got a raise. They just stopped moving the goalposts. And the impact of that one choice was huge. By keeping their lifestyle fixed, every raise, every bonus just went straight into what he calls his independence fund. And it wasn't just about saving more money, though. It was a psychological shield. It got them off that endless treadmill of trying to keep up with the neighbors. And the result of all that? Just simple peace of mind. Okay, so this brings up a really interesting question. To be good with money, do you have to be a robot? Do you have to be this cold, calculating machine where every decision is perfectly optimized on a spreadsheet? Housel's answer? A big, fat no. The goal isn't to be perfectly rational. It's just to be reasonable. And he gives a perfect example from his own life to prove it. He talks about what was, on paper, probably the worst financial move they could have possibly made. But then, in the very same breath, he says it was the absolute best money decision they ever made. So what's going on here? How can it be both? The decision was they paid off their house. Now, any financial advisor would probably have a heart attack, right? Mortgage rates were super low. They could have made so much more by putting that cash in the stock market. But say, Housel wasn't playing the spreadsheet game. He was playing the sleep well at night game. The psychological feeling of knowing that house was theirs, that it could never be taken away from them, that return was way bigger than anything the stock market could offer. And he takes this whole reasonable over rational idea and applies it to his investing, too. He keeps about 20% of his financial assets just sitting in cash. Again, most advisors would tell you that's crazy, that cash is losing a little bit to inflation every single day. But here's the thing. To Housel, that cash isn't just dead money. It's buying him something far more valuable. It's his oxygen. It's his safety net. It's the absolute guarantee that if life throws him a curveball, and let's be honest, it always does, he will never be forced to sell his stocks at the worst possible time just to pay a surprise bill. And that just perfectly explains the genius of the strategy, right? That pile of unproductive cash is actually the bodyguard for his real wealth-building engine, his long-term investments. By making sure he never has to touch them, he's letting the magic of compounding do its work, totally uninterrupted, for years and years. Now, over time, his actual investment strategy has gotten incredibly simple. I mean, he started out as a stock picker, trying to find the next big thing, juggling like 25 different companies. And today, he owns exactly 0 individual stocks. Every single dollar he invests is in basic, low-cost index funds.
So why the big switch? Well, he came to terms with a pretty humbling fact. Trying to beat the market is just really, really hard. Think about this. Over a 10-year period, 85% of the pros, the people who do this for a living, couldn't even beat a simple S&P 500 index fund. If they can't do it, what chance do the rest of us have?
And this is where Housel's insight is just so good. He realized that by trying to be a great investor, he was also opening himself up to the risk of being a really bad one. But with simple index funds, it's pretty hard to be a bad investor. You're basically guaranteed to get the market's average return over time. And since that's more than enough for him to reach his goal of independence, why would he take on all that extra risk? So when you boil it all down, his entire financial plan, his whole philosophy, comes down to these 3 simple things. He focuses only on the things he can actually control, saving a lot of money, being patient enough to let it grow, and staying optimistic about the future. That's it. That's the whole game. No complex strategies, no chasing hot tips.
And that's really what it's all about. The true measure of financial success isn't just about having the biggest number in your bank account. It's about designing a financial life that lets you put your head on the pillow at night and just sleep. Everything else is just details. And that leads us to the final and maybe the most important idea in the entire book. Your financial choices are yours. What looks crazy on a spreadsheet might be perfectly reasonable for you. That cash under the mattress, paying off that low-interest loan. It might not make sense to an analyst, but it makes sense in the context of your own life, your own fears, and your own goals. We're all playing a different game. And once you accept that, you realize that when it comes to money, no one is crazy.